5 years ago, in a village called Otsuka, chaos and flames engulfed everything. A plague swept through, wiping out every last resident. Only 3 people barely clung to life: a 13-year-old boy named Shino, his friend named Maji, his buddy Sosuke, and his dog. At that moment, a stranger appeared before Shino, offering him a choice: die or take this samurai sword and live, cursed for life. Now, back in the present, Shino lives in seclusion with his friends to hide from those who seek his power. Maji has prepared breakfast, telling Shino she's tried a new recipe. Nervously, he hopes it tastes good. As he and his friends taste her new dish, it's awful. Even a crow eating it nearly faints from the flavor. Shino asks Maji what it is, and she replies, it's bug water, chameleon, and turtle blood, a very healthy meal. Another friend comments that the cake is terrible. Maji warns him, throw it away, and I won't forgive you. You know what I can do. But an old man says he wants more, leaving everyone shocked and confused. Maji is thrilled and tells him, right away. Then, she pauses and asks, wait, where's Sosuke? The scene shifts to Sosuke, who's visiting a friend's family in the village. The mother welcomes him, saying, it's good you're here now, Sosuke. Inside, the father argues with his son, calling him a fool. Sosuke asks what's going on. The father assures him, don't worry, Sosuke, my foolish son just keeps skipping school to play all day. Sosuke notices that the boy even burned his books, claiming he doesn't need them since he's never going back to school. The boy declares to his father and Sosuke, I hate school. I don't want a job when I grow up. His father reminds him that he's only 12 and knows nothing about the world. The boy then suggests to Sosuke, how about I come to your house instead of school and you teach me? Sosuke replies, even if I agreed, I can't teach you every day. The father scoffs, saying, the boy would make everyone else foolish. He's only interested in visiting Shino to play, not study. The boy responds that Shino's probably out running in the woods again, as he's done lately, forgetting he shouldn't mention this in front of Sosuke, who forbids Shino from going alone. The boy stammers as his father scolds him, hitting him lightly on the head. After collecting the supplies he needs, Sosuke heads home with the boy, who's helping carry the bags after getting his mother's permission. Sosuke warns him, you're sure about walking back with me? People here don't like me and my friends. The boy, whose name is Kenta, insists, I'm fine walking with you. When they arrive, Maji greets them, surprised that Sosuke managed all those supplies alone, but he assures her Kenta helped. Kenta enters, Maji thanks him, and Shino joins them. As usual, Kenta annoys Shino. At that moment, Sosuke asks Shino if they can talk privately about a place he'd been recently, reminding him he'd warned him not to go there alone. Shino glances at Kenta, realizing he must have told Sosuke, and Kenta quickly slips away. Shino, now anxious, agrees, and he and Sosuke go to another room, where Sosuke asks if he went into the woods alone recently. Shino hesitates, but his crow speaks up, confirming he was there. Shino agrees, saying the crow was with him. Sosuke, frustrated, reminds him he'd warned him multiple times not to go there alone, as those with special powers like them are easily drawn into the forest's darkness, which could lead to anything happening to them. Shino is upset that Kenta told Sosuke about his trip to the woods. Sosuke then suggests that Kenta's frequent contact with them may have affected him. On his way home, Kenta suddenly encounters a ghost resembling Shino calling out to him. Terrified, he runs home. The scene shifts to their teacher informing Sosuke and Shino they've received a summons from the High Lord of the Council of Elders. Sosuke asks why Shino is also summoned. Their teacher explains he isn't sure, but the summons is real. He's verified the seal and signature. Shino suggests ignoring it, but the teacher insists they can't. The Emperor is searching for the sacred sword. The sword is actually the crow that's with Shino, though ordinary people don't know that. Sosuke realizes the council must have discovered the sword's presence. The teacher confirms this is likely true. Meanwhile, at the council, a man named Ryo is informed that survivors from Otsuka still live, referring to Shino and his friends. Ryo, interested in the sacred sword, reveals he was the one who gave it to Shino. The next morning, the team arrives to escort Sosuke and Shino to the Emperor. Arrogantly, they taunt the friends. Shino, enraged, says, do you want to see my power? His crow suddenly emerges from his arm, attacking and taking them down. Their teacher, now extremely anxious, identifies them as the 5 foxes from the Osaki clan. The old man adds that they've found an enemy far stronger than themselves. Kenta arrives, telling Sosuke the village is in chaos, with 3 missing teenagers whose families are frantic. Maji rushes to tell their teacher what's happening. Kenta then asks Shino if he went to the forest after he left yesterday. Shino denies it, but Sosuke is suspicious. Kenta describes seeing a ghostly woman who resembled Shino in the forest the night before. Both Sosuke and Shino are stunned, and Shino warns Kenta to stay away from the forest and not return. Kenta is hurt and confused, but he leaves. The foxes inform their lord about Shino and the sword's location. Their lord praises them for the discovery. Later, Sosuke returns home, and Maji asks if he found Kenta. He says no and mentions that Kenta hasn't returned home. Maji tells him Shino found Kenta's necklace outside, and he immediately rushes out. Alarmed, Sosuke remembers it's the necklace he gave Kenta, and he races out as well, transforming into a giant wolf. Darkness falls, and we see Kenta trapped in a spider's web in the forest, where Shino finds him. Kenta asks if he's the real Shino, wondering who's been watching him all day. They notice the ghostly figure who set the web and looks exactly like Shino. Suddenly, the ground shakes, and a giant spider appears, with the ghost perched on it. Kenta faints as the spider attacks them, but Sosuke arrives in time to save them. They dodge the spider's strikes, and Shino, wielding the sword, becomes incredibly powerful, slicing the spider in half with one swift move. Sosuke tells Shino that with the sword, no one can defeat him. Kenta is brought back to his family, who are overjoyed. Later, Shino and Kenta return home. When they arrive, they learn that the Emperor's men have taken Maji to him as a hostage, threatening them. Sosuke declares this is a declaration of war, and they prepare to leave the next morning to rescue her. At that moment, Maggie is sitting with the president, making demands that have exhausted the servants, who are completely worn out. The president says to her, "You're really a hard person to please." Maggie responds, "How dare you say that, after you kidnapped me and forced me to stay here, you sly fox." The president replies, "All I needed was your help to meet your friends, and I also heard that the girl who survived Otsuka village was very beautiful, so I wanted to see you." He keeps trying to annoy her, but she embarrasses him until he loses track of his words and goes silent. Meanwhile, Shino and Sosuke arrive in the capital. Shortly after, men from the Council of the Wise arrive to take Shino and Sosuke, but Sosuke refuses, saying they want to settle in their residence first. Ryo arrives, whom Shino already knows, but Sosuke asks who he is. Shino explains that Ryo is one of the members of the 4 great beast families. Ryo resolves the situation, telling the men to leave and assuring them that Shino and Sosuke are his guests. He adds that he'll explain everything to the Council of the Wise later. He then takes them to the palace and leaves, saying he's busy and that they'll talk tomorrow. He tells them not to worry about Maggie, and that he'll arrange for them to see her tomorrow. Later, Sosuke asks Shino how he knows Ryo. Shino hands him his jacket, saying, "I'll explore the city." Sosuke tells him not to stray too far, and Shino agrees and heads out. Shino then wanders around the marketplace, listening to people talking about rumors of soul-devouring demons and beasts. Shino asks the crow, "What are they talking about?" The crow responds, "Forget it, there are no such things as demons. Wicked people are the real demons." Suddenly, a young man falls onto Shino, and they both hit the ground. We find that this young man is being chased out of a large mansion by a group who tells him never to come back. The young man, clearly angry at the priests, yells, "I know Jinba is in there. Give me my brother back." One of the priests responds, "What are you talking about? The one we captured isn't human at all. He's a demon." The young man's father arrives, calling out to him. His name is Kojo, and his father, after apologizing to the high priest Soren, tells him not to come back. Kojo, still fuming, is chastised by his father, who says, "You're foolish. What good did all this accomplish? Use your head for once." Throughout this, Kojo has been standing over Shino, not realizing he's there. When he notices Shino, he's startled and later takes him in to treat him, as Shino has passed out. Kojo notices that Shino is from the Council of the Wise and sees the mark on Shino's shoulder, becoming curious about who he is. When Shino regains consciousness, Kojo invites him to eat as compensation for what happened. Sosuke arrives in dog form, and the crow brings Shino back. Kojo ends up with a huge bill for the meal, poor guy. That evening, the high priest is talking to Soren, asking about the morning commotion. Soren responds, "Nothing, just a stray dog. We took care of it." They then discuss their plans to deal with the demons, even though demons don't actually exist. It's clear Soren is up to something sinister. Meanwhile, we see Kojo's brother, Jinba, locked in a cell with the same mark on his face that Shino has on his arm. In the morning, Sosuke goes for a walk, and Ryo finds Shino with his huge dog. Shino tells Ryo, it's been 5 years. Ryo comments, it seems Sosuke has mostly forgotten the past, right? Shino replies, yes, he barely remembers anything. Ryo then adds, I never expected the sword contract would turn out this way. You're not aging at all. He mentions the sword's power and how anyone who contracts with it has to pay a price. Ryo speculates that Shino's price is that he'll never grow up again. Shino laughs it off, saying, what price? The crow and I are living just fine. He then pulls the giant crow from his arm. Shino asks Ryo directly, so, what do you want? Are you trying to reclaim the sword? Just then, Sosuke enters the room, cheerfully saying, good morning. What's got you two raising the dead so early? They sit down and talk about Maggie, who's at the Beast Clan's mansion, and decide to visit her right after breakfast. Shino and Ryo start bickering again, and Sosuke has to calm them down. Ryo's huge dog then rushes over, showing affection for Sosuke, which annoys Shino, who's upset that the dog likes Sosuke but not him. Frustrated, he stomps off inside. We then see Kojo and his father, saddened over Jinba's situation. His father tells Kojo, we just need to wait until the moon rises. Let's hope Jinba can hold on until then. The scene shifts to the mansion of the Osaki Beast Clan. Maggie is sitting with the president, who is irritating her to the point that she almost smashes a table on him. Just then, Shino and Sosuke arrive, and Maggie rushes to the door, accidentally smacking Shino in the face with her shoe, exclaiming, took you long enough. They warmly greet each other. The president, Osaki, comes out and welcomes Shino, Sosuke, and Ryo, introducing himself. Shino, irritated, says, so you're the one who kidnapped Maggie. The president denies it, claiming he only invited her to stay with him. They all go inside the mansion, where Ryo introduces himself to Maggie, saying he also lives there as one of the leaders of the 4 Beast Clans. Maggie feels like she's seen Ryo before. Osaki then takes them all on a tour of the city. Sosuke asks Shino how he knows Ryo, but Shino dismisses it, saying it's not important. As they walk, the city's dogs begin reacting to Sosuke, sensing his canine spirit. Meanwhile, Shino notices someone watching them. It's Soren, who has his creature spy on Shino before it returns to him and enters his body. Surrounding him are more of these sinister creatures. Later, Soren visits Jinba, using his creatures to torture him, and we find that insects are sucking Jinba's blood from all over his body as the monk Siren tortures him cruelly. In the evening, Shino is sitting with Sosuke after taking a bath and says, I'll ask you again. Shino, how do you know Ryo? Shino replies, I won't tell you, and besides, it's none of your business. Noticing Sosuke might get upset, Shino adds, I met him 5 years ago, and I figured you and Maki might not remember him. He continues, saying that the person who saved them when their village was on fire was Ryo, and tells Sosuke what happened, adding, I told Ryo that day I would repay him someday, which is why I'm saying it's none of your concern, Sosuke. Sosuke then tells Shino, well, it's late now. Let's rest and figure out his intentions in the morning. They go to sleep afterward. In the morning, Osaki is wandering around the city with Maki, Shino, and Sosuke. Shino notices Osaki's foxes watching him closely, worried about him, and comments, what's up with them? They seem overly protective. Meanwhile, Kojo is talking to the town guards and finds that his brother, Jinba, has been stopped from working, and he questions them about the unclear reasons they give, only to get thrown out again and land on Shino. It seems like fate is playing a trick on him. Kojo then takes Shino and Sosuke to his home, acting all excited, and calls for his mother, who hits him with a book, telling him to calm down and behave. Kojo introduces Sosuke and Shino to her. Maki, meanwhile, grows concerned about Shino and Sosuke, wondering where they went. She notices the girls heading to school, and Osaki observes this, deciding to look for a suitable school for Maki. Later, Osaki and Ryo talk about the demon, which is Jinba, and Ryo notes how unlucky he is to have been captured by Siren, of all people in the city. They discuss Shino's magic sword, and Osaki tells Ryo they need to keep a closer watch on the sword, as every power in the land desires it as a weapon. Kojo invites Shino and Sosuke for a meal, joking, where does all that food go? Do you have a hole in your stomach or something? He then says to Sosuke, it must be tough keeping up with him. Shino asks Kojo, why do I always find you in trouble? Kojo replies, it's because of the people at Shojetsu's temple. Shino looks surprised and is about to ask him about his brother's situation, but Kojo changes the subject and says goodbye. They go back to Ryo, where Sosuke says, so tell us, why exactly did you summon Shino here? Ryo brings out 2 beads and Shino exclaims, have you kept these with you all this time? I've been looking for them forever. Can I take them back? These beads are precious to us from when we were little. Ryo explains, there are still 6 more of these beads out there. Shino is stunned and asks, so you're saying there are others who also have beads like ours? Ryo says, these beads are part of Fusherheim and her 8 followers. Shino looks surprised and says, what's that? Ryo explains explains, it's a legend passed down by the Satomi clan. He goes on to explain that long ago, there was a woman named Tama who came from the main island and used her beauty and cunning to deceive people and destroy them, ultimately earning favor from the court. During that period, the island was engulfed in darkness, chaos, and famine, with people killing each other for food. In this situation, a princess appeared with 8 young men, but Shino grows bored and interrupts. Get to the point. Rio says, weren't you the one who asked me to tell the story? Shino apologizes and asks him to continue. Rio explains that there were 8 important beads, and Shino's mission is to find the remaining 6 and their owners. Shino, frustrated, says, are you crazy? There are millions of people in this world. How are we supposed to find them? The solution would be to write about it in the newspapers if you really want to find them. Sosuke agrees to take on the mission and starts his search. Rio asks Shino, have you noticed any changes in Sosuke since the incident? Shino replies, no, and even if he has changed, Sosuke will always be Sosuke. Elsewhere, Kojo's father is pleading with Siren to release Jinba, who is the fiancé of his daughter, Kojo's sister, making Jinba practically family. He begs Siren, but it's in vain as Siren tells him, he's no longer your son, he's a demon now, and dismisses him. Siren then returns to Jinba to continue torturing him. Due to the intense torment, Jinba's condition starts to change, and a powerful energy emerges from him as he transforms and escapes. Jinba, now a beast, escapes and heads for the city's main tower, drawing public attention. It turns out this was all part of Siren's plan from the beginning to transform Jinba, who is now searching for souls to consume. At this time, Shino is with Sosuke in the market, and Sosuke tells him that they'll handle everything together from now on. But Shino senses Jinba, now a demonic beast, approaching, and he says to Sosuke, there's something coming our way, and it feels evil. Shino begins luring the monster out of the city to avoid endangering people. The monster pursues Shino as Sosuke transforms into a dog and runs to help him. Kojo realizes that the demon chasing Shino is actually Jinba. Shino successfully leads Jinba out of the city but senses something unusual about this beast, thinking it seems human in origin. He stops, draws the crow sword from his arm, and prepares to confront Jinba, the beast. Jinba attacks Shino, struggling to resist his fierce inner power as he recalls his fiancé and family. Siren and his sinister sect arrive, and Siren taunts Shino, yes, you're the magic sword, aren't you? The only soul with the courage to face the beast. Siren then launches arrows at Shino, injuring Sosuke and Jinba, and all 3 fall into the river. Unfortunately, the night gets very late, and Maggie is extremely worried and frustrated that they didn't inform her. He tells her, don't worry, if you want, I can send the foxes to look for them for you. She replies, no, I'm not worried at all. Then he asks, how about we go check out the school tomorrow? She's surprised, and he explains, it seems Shino and Sosuke will be here for a while longer, so you'll want to start school. What do you say about visiting your new school? Meanwhile, Kojo still doesn't know what happened to Jinba, Shino, and Sosuke, and he continues to search for them in the city. The little monster suddenly grows larger in the water, saving the crow, Shino, and Sosuke from drowning. Shino worries about Sosuke, but Sosuke reassures him that it's just a surface wound, not deep. Shino then sends the crow to quickly inform Rio of what happened. Jinba is still with them, hanging on Shino's monster's tail. Shino has no idea who he is or why he's there. Sosuke suggests, I think this might be the demon. Elsewhere, the villain Siren and his cult are still searching for Shino and Jinba. Siren orders them not to let them escape and to bring him the magical sword immediately. Shino and Sosuke return home. Shino is worried about Sosuke, not only because of his injury, but because he has always been alone since he was young, with no parents. Later, Sosuke wakes up and says, why are you sitting here? You'll catch a cold. Shino is happy that Sosuke is feeling better and hugs him. At that moment, Ryo's giant dog and the crow enter the room. Kojo enters the room, calling them for breakfast, but is shocked to find a giant dog taking up most of the room and screams. They go down to eat, and Shino is delighted about the meal. Kojo is stunned to learn that Sosuke is actually the dog. Then Shino asks about Jinba, and Kojo replies that he's still asleep, but assures Shino that he'll have Jinba apologize if he caused any trouble. Jinba enters, surprised to see a talking crow and 2 large dogs, one of whom is Sosuke. He's stunned, asking, am I still dreaming? Kojo assures him, no, you're not dreaming, and Shino notices the mark on Jinba's face. Kojo asks Jinba if he remembers anything from yesterday. Jinba replies, you mean what happened with those stupid priests? They talk a bit about spiritual power and transformations. They start eating, and Kojo recounts recounts recent kidnappings and detentions that have occurred in the north over the past 3 months. He explains that Jinba, as an army officer, was sent to the area to investigate, with Kojo accompanying him as a personal guard. Among the hostages was a royal family member named Sahimi. Due to the extreme cold, many soldiers started retreating due to the harsh conditions and lack of food. Young men were dying of hunger. The situation worsened when demons appeared, and both Kojo and Jinba were injured and close to death. But Jinba suddenly wished for them to live. The 2 stones they had, the same ones as Shino's, began to glow. Kojo recalls that they can't remember anything else afterward. Kojo then shows Shino a picture of his sister Noi and Jinba, explaining that they almost died but lived. Unfortunately, his sister Noi didn't survive. Jinba is so grief-stricken that he acts like a madman, attempting suicide multiple times, even slicing his neck with a knife, but his wounds heal quickly and he remains alive. Kojo also tried to commit suicide, but his wounds healed instantly. Shino asks Kojo about what happened to the others. Kojo replies that they all died except for the royal family member who survived, though he doesn't know why. Rumor has it that Ryo was the one who saved her with his dog, so Shino asks why he wasn't sent in the first place if it was that easy for him. Kojo explains that he didn't interfere as part of the government council, but the royal family pleaded with him, and he eventually agreed. Kojo then asks, "So what's your story? Why is that awful siren looking for you, like Jinba?" Meanwhile, Siren reports everything to the head priest, mentioning the magical sword but not telling the full truth. The head priest dismisses the rumors as nonsense, saying the sword only exists in legends. Siren apologizes and starts to leave, but the head priest stops him and asks if he truly doesn't know where the sword is. Siren denies it, and the head priest taunts him, saying, "Even if you did, you're not as strong as your brother, so you wouldn't be able to handle it." Frustrated, Siren leaves. At Ryo's palace, Ryo and Osaki are relieved that Shino and Sosuke are safe. Osaki asks Ryo what's so special about Sosuke that made Ryo's dog choose him. Ryo shrugs, saying he doesn't know, and invites Osaki to ask the dog directly. The foxes joke with Osaki, saying they could ask on his behalf, and discover that the dog saw something familiar to Ryo in Sosuke. Back with Kojo and Jinba, Kojo explains that he knows Shino and Sosuke's story, and that they, too, are victims from a village destroyed by monsters and plague. A surveillance insect from Siren's side watches them at home. The scene then shifts to Maggie as she leaves school. Osaki comes to take her home, but on the way, insects from Siren attack, striking Maggie on the face and taking a blood sample. Osaki quickly commands his spirit fox to eliminate the insects, and it swiftly does. Furious, Siren vows to teach Osaki a lesson. Siren is seen later, discussing with his followers the preparations for capturing the demon and Shino and Sosuke. They tell him they're awaiting orders from the head priest. Siren declares that they don't need to wait, as he has locked up the head priest. Back with Shino and friends, Jinba has grown fond of Shino's monster, the orb, and names it Migo, surprising everyone. Shino tells him, "You two seem to be close. We'll leave it with you." Kojo insists, "No way, you're not leaving that thing here. You're taking it with you when you leave." At that moment, Siren's insect army and cult members surround Kojo's house, prepared for battle. Shino senses them and steps outside to find the house encircled. A fierce battle ensues, and Shino and the others fight back. Siren taunts Jinba with mention of Noi, enraging Jinba and Kojo, who transform into beasts and defeat their enemies in one powerful strike, even severing Siren's arm, forcing him to retreat. As Siren tries to escape, Osaki appears, blocking his path, saying, "You think you can get away?" Osaki summons his 5 foxes, terrifying Siren's followers, who abandon him. Siren confronts Osaki, asking, "What are you doing here, you scoundrel?" Osaki says calmly, "Forget that. Worry about your arm. If you don't treat it, you'll die." Siren responds, "Don't bother. My insects will heal it quickly." Osaki remarks, "Confident, aren't you? Too bad. They're not coming back this time," revealing that he knows Siren is actually his half-brother. Osaki lets his foxes finish off Siren. Shino and Sosuke finish off the remaining insects, and Shino tries to douse the flames with his magical sword, causing rain to extinguish the fire. Kojo and Jinba return to their senses and human form, and Shino checks on them to ensure they're safe. The next day, Shino is wandering around the palace and finds a strange corridor. He feels the presence of the serpent spirit and becomes scared and anxious. At that moment, Ryo appears behind him, placing a hand on Shino's back and saying, "What are you doing here?" Shino jumps in shock, shouts, and falls to the ground, saying, "Why did you sneak up on me like that?" Ryo replies, "What you're doing is wrong. You shouldn't roam in a place without knowing its owner. This part of the palace belongs to someone else, and even Osaki and I are not allowed here." He extends a hand to help Shino up. Shino is confused, but he gets up and walks with Ryo. Then, Rio talks to Shino about the fire at Kujo's house on the mountain. Shino says, "What's that got to do with me? That wasn't my fault, you fool." Osaki laughs because Shino called Rio a fool, as no one in the realm would dare to speak to Rio like that. Then Osaki apologizes to Rio for laughing and tells him that Shino had nothing to do with any of this and was dragged into it against his will. Osaki then tells them he's sure the monks won't be hunting demons and monsters anymore. Shino is surprised and asks if he's sure or just guessing. Rio replies, "Yes, I heard that the head monk stepped down and nobody knows where Siren is, so there's nothing to worry about from them right now." Then it's time for Rio to leave. He tells Shino, "Try not to get into any trouble today," and walks away. Shino asks Osaki if he knows where Rio always goes. Osaki answers that he goes to his job at the Council of Elders, as usual. Shino is surprised and asks what Rio does there. Osaki explains that Rio is one of the council's pillars. Shino is shocked to learn about Rio's high rank and says, "Are you sure about this?" Osaki tells him he doesn't understand at all. Rio is very popular here. Osaki explains that Rio's popularity is due to his appearance and his strong connections with the royal family. He also supports the royal council and has a charming personality, so he's like the council's beloved child, bringing generous donations from the people. Then Shino asks Osaki about Sosuke. Osaki says he's still asleep. Shino replies that he's just very sleepy at the start of the lunar month. Osaki comments that even the crow is quiet today, and Shino tells him it's because the crow is always calm on the first day of the lunar month, while Sosuke feels drowsy. As time passes, Sosuke wakes up and finds Shino next to him, reading a book. Feeling reassured, Sosuke goes back to sleep. At this moment, Shino recalls Ryo's words about any changes in Sosuke over time and gets a bit anxious, thinking that even if there were changes, Sosuke would still be the same to him. Later, Shino gets very hungry and heads to the kitchen to find food since Osaki and the foxes aren't around. Suddenly, he bumps into a girl and falls to the ground. He's taken aback by her beauty and apologizes to her. At that moment, the crow appears on Shino's arm, and when the girl sees it, she screams, strikes Shino, and runs away. Shino later sits with Osaki and recounts what happened while he's eating. Osaki says, "It seems you met Iani." Shino asks, "Who's Iani?" Osaki explains, "She's a member of one of the 4 great animal families chosen by the Great Serpent." Osaki tells Shino, "You're very lucky. The Great Serpent didn't harm you. He's merciless and would have killed you if anything had happened to Iani." Magi tells Shino that he surprised the girl by appearing out of nowhere in her room and probably scared her. Osaki asks her what she's been doing, and she says she was gathering flowers that Iani dropped. She gives them to Shino and tells him to give them to Iani, apologize, and invite her for tea since they're the same age. Magi wants to be her friend. Shino feels nervous but takes the flowers and heads to Iani's area, calling out for someone to meet him, but there's no response. As he moves further down the path, the area becomes strange, and fog spreads everywhere. The sword senses danger, and Shino feels threatened. Suddenly, the place transforms into an illusion, and he hears a voice saying, "There's something special about your body," referring to the sword. At that moment, the crow becomes even more aggressive and tries to emerge, but Shino holds it back. The voice tells him, "You entered the barrier without permission," which is disrespectful. Suddenly, someone attacks Shino, injuring him, and he falls to the ground. The attacker is revealed to be Iani's guardian, the Great Serpent in human form. She says to Shino, "Didn't Osaki tell you this area is forbidden?" Shino replies, "Yes, but I came to bring flowers for Iani." The serpent is about to finish him off when Sosuke arrives quickly, apologizing on Shino's behalf. He introduces both of them to her. To forgive Shino, the serpent demands that Sosuke offer one of his arms as a sacrifice. Sosuke takes the sword and is ready to cut his arm, but Shino tries to stop him. At that moment, Iani arrives and stops everything instantly. She asks the serpent, "Why are you doing these wicked things? Aren't these people important guests of Rio?" The serpent responds, "Yes, but they broke our rules." Iani says, "What's the harm in that? They brought me flowers." And she cries, saying she hates the serpent, then runs off. The serpent reconsiders and lets Sosuke and Shino go. When Shino and Sosuke return to their room, Shino apologizes. Sosuke tells him, "Didn't I tell you to stay quietly by my side? Why are you always causing trouble?" Shino replies, "Magi asked me to do this." Sosuke is concerned about Shino's injury, but Shino assures him the crow will heal it quickly. At that moment, Iani appears and apologizes for what happened, noticing Shino's injury. She's brought him medicine. She's shocked when she enters and sees Shino petting Sosuke's head, gets embarrassed, and runs back to her room. Shino calls after her and convinces her to return. Iani thanks him for the beautiful flowers. Shino says, "Don't thank me, thank Magi." Iani asks, "Who's that?" Shino explains that Magi is his childhood friend and wants to be Iani's friend, too. Iani is surprised and says, "But I'm strange. My hair is silver, and my eyes are also an unusual color. She might find me repulsive." Shino reassures her, "Repulsive? There's no such thing." The crow emerges from his hand, and Iani hides her face, afraid. She asks, "Aren't you scared of that thing?" He says, "No, not at all. The only thing I know is that if it weren't for him, I'd be dead." They talk a bit about the people around them, and the scene shifts to Shino apologizing to the serpent. Later, Iani meets Magi at the city festival in the evening, and they become friends. The next day, Shino talks to Ryo and tells him about an important mission he wants to carry out, which is to go to a mountain to check the situation there. Of course, this incident is similar to what happened in his village. Afterward, Shino sets off on the mission, and then Sosuke enters to ask Ryo where Shino is. He says, "It's lunchtime, and I can't find Shino either." Ryo replies, "I knew he'd leave, but I didn't expect him to go alone." Sosuke looks surprised, and Ryo tells him, "It would be best if you hurry after Shino." Sosuke says, "What do you mean? What's going on?" Ryo explains the mission to him afterward. At this point, Shino has reached the mountain peak and is walking through the forest, feeling puzzled by the heavy rain falling on the peak. The crow then tells him that both his and Sosuke's stones are glowing. Shino takes them out of his pocket, and they are indeed glowing intensely. Shino wonders why they are glowing so brightly, but at that moment, he slips and falls off a cliff, sliding down to the ground. Meanwhile, another person is asleep leaning against a wall and dreams of someone attacking him with a sword. He wakes up startled. A woman comes out of the house and asks him, "Did you dream of that man again? Are you okay?" He responds, "Yes." She goes back inside, and he thinks to himself, "The man in my dream took everything from me." At that time, Sosuke is boarding the train to catch up with Shino. Just then, at the station, Kojo calls out to him, and Sosuke asks, "What are you doing here?" Kojo replies, "I came to greet some guests." He then says, "Are you looking for Shino?" Sosuke asks, "Did you see him?" Kojo replies, "Yes. He took the train heading west a little while ago." Kojo adds, "I guessed he'd go off on his own without permission. Do you know where he went now?" Sosuke replies, "Yes, I'm going after him right away." Just then, Jinba shows up and says, "You're planning to catch up to him, right?" Sosuke replies, "Yes," and they decide to join Sosuke. Jinba says, "The train won't come for another 2 hours, and it's forbidden to go to such a dangerous place alone." Sosuke says, "Fine." They say there's a monkey spirit there. Kojo says, "Another monster problem?" At that time, Shino is still lying on the ground, but he's beginning to regain consciousness. He calls out to the crow and searches for the stones, but can't find Sosuke's. Suddenly, while searching, the monkey spirit appears, and it's a giant monkey. The monkey does nothing to him, and Shino asks it about the stones, but the monkey doesn't respond and instead brings him different stones. Shino says, "That's not it." Then he says, "I'm sorry, there's no way you can find something that's small with your huge body," and tells the monkey he'll search alone, thanking it. Next, we see a wise woman being asked by someone about the disease, asking if it will infect the entire village. She says, "Don't worry, it's not contagious, but you can't drink water or beverages randomly." The person responds, "All right," although we're heading into the festival, and we return to Shino, who is still searching for the stones. He asks the monkey, "Tell me, have any people come to explore this mountain recently, or was there a woman with the villagers?" Shino wants to describe the woman to the monkey but can't, even though he's seen her in his dreams many times. The monkey appears clueless about the matter, and Shino thinks to himself, "I'm an idiot. I came here without gathering any evidence and even lost Sosuke's stone." At that moment, Sosuke appears in front of Shino and scolds him for acting on his own. Kojo and Jinba arrive, saying, "It's good you're safe alone." Shino says, "I'm not alone, I'm with the monkey," but then realizes the monkey isn't there, so he stops and says nothing. Shino apologizes to Sosuke for losing his stone. Sosuke says, "Don't worry, it's fine. The important thing is we get back safely." Shino says, "No, the stone is a part of you, and you must take care of it." Sosuke lifts Shino and says, "Don't worry about it," then puts him down, and they leave. They return to the village, and Kojo says, "Let's find a place to stay for the night." At that moment, when Kojo and the others encounter the village residents, the villagers become frightened and immediately lock them in a cell. The friends are confused and wonder what's going on. It's revealed they were arrested for going to the mountain. Then a doctor arrives and tells them, "You went to the mountain? How reckless." She introduces herself as Seiki Saki and says she's the village doctor. She tells them they might have been exposed to a dangerous disease, so they won't be released until everything is checked. She says she needs to take blood samples from them first, and then she'll instruct them on what to do. Saki's supervisor arrives, who knows Jinba, and salutes him. Jinba doesn't remember him, and the supervisor tells him he served as a medical trainee on the front lines. Kojo recognizes him at that moment and asks, "Aren't you Joji?" Joji replies, "Yes, aren't you Kojo?" They recall each other, and Kojo says Joji was strange, and even when soldiers got injured, they didn't let him near them. Saki tells Joji to take their samples. The scene then shifts to the strange man approaching the detention room where the friends are and watching as Joji takes their samples. The man is shocked when he sees Sosuke and says, "I finally found him. This is the one who took everything from me 2 years ago. This is the man who killed me before." The next morning, the man and his female group perform their show, with people watching from everywhere. In the morning, Saki returns and tells the group that they found nothing in their blood samples, so they'll release them. She adds, "But we're still cautious, so we'll give you a room in the Wise One's quarters, but don't wander around the village too much." Kojo says, "You're still imprisoning us." We then learn the strange man's name is Asakino, and a woman with him asks, "What are you doing alone here? You're wearing a mask, and that's not like you." He removes the mask, furious, and says, "I finally found the one who took my life." At the same time, Saki takes the friends to the Wise One's quarters and finds the place in terrible condition. She says, "Put up with it until the festival is over." Jinba asks her, "How long is the festival?" She replies, "Starting today, it'll last 3 more days." They go silent and follow her into the Wise One's quarters. Just then, the crow calls out to Shino, and Sosuke asks, "You haven't been searching for the stone since yesterday, right?" The crow says, "Yes," but Shino silences it. Sosuke warns Shino that it's dangerous to be away from the crow for long because Shino's spirit and the crow's are originally one, and it would be hazardous for their lives to be separated. Shino replies, "Got it." Then, feeling down, Shino leaves for the village, and on his way, he meets the strange man, who says, "Are you a child from the Wise One's quarters?" Shino says, "No, I'm just a visitor here." The man responds, "You're one of those who entered the mountain, right?" Shino says, "Since you know, it's best if you stay away from us." The man says, "I'm also an outsider, so I have nothing to do with that." He asks, "So you'll stay here for a while, right?" Shino replies, "Yes, until the festival ends. We'll be at the Wise One's quarters." The man says, all right. Just then, Kojo calls out to Shino, saying, "Wait for me." The man bids him farewell and leaves. Later, Sosuke talks with Saki about what they were doing on the mountain, but he avoids giving her any information. Meanwhile, Kojo and Jinba prepare a delicious lunch. Saki is surprised they managed to make such amazing food. Just then, the strange man enters and raises a sword at Sosuke in the Wise One's quarters. Shino then goes to Sasuke to apologize, but finds the mysterious man stabbing Sasuke in the shoulder with a sword. Shino becomes worried about him. Sasuke tells Shino not to come closer, saying it's dangerous. The strange man glances at Shino and says to Sasuke, "Is this the important person to you?" He looks completely useless. The man pulls the sword out of Sasuke's shoulder and asks Shino, "Why did you do this?" But the man says to Sasuke, "I'm the one who should be asking. Why did you kill my family?" Sasuke looks confused and says, "What are you even talking about?" The man replies, "This was 2 years ago." Sasuke, bewildered, responds, "Are you out of your mind? What are you talking about?" The man says, "You're pretending not to understand, but you've killed many people." The man gets angry and attacks Sasuke with the sword, seemingly about to kill him. At that moment, Shino summons a crow from his arm, which turns into a sword, stopping the man. Shino asks, "What kind of strange misunderstanding is this?" The man replies, "Misunderstanding? No way. I can never forget the voice and face of that man." The man charges at Sasuke again, but Shino blocks him. The fight continues between Shino and the man. Shino notices the man is strong. The man strikes Shino, causing him to fall and drop his sword. Then, the man approaches Sasuke and says, "Show your true form." Sasuke transforms into a dog. The man gets furious, saying, "You're mocking me, aren't you?" But then, the woman with the man steps in, saying, "Stop immediately. Your conclusions are wrong. You're always this rash." At that moment, the woman recognizes the incredible sword and becomes curious about Shino's identity. She tells them, "If this man has offended you, I apologize on his behalf, and I'm willing to listen to your demands." We learn that her name is Coco. Shino says, "All right, I want you to look for something." She asks, "What is it?" He tells her, "Sasuke's stone." He adds, "The mountain where you'll search isn't a safe place for humans, but you can handle it, right?" Coco smiles and says, "As you wish." Sasuke and Shino then return to their friends. Kojo says to Sasuke, "You're unlucky to be hurt right at the start." Sasuke asks, "So you were were just watching? Kojo replies, yes, but don't say I was just watching and not helping because you and Shino are the type who don't die easily. I'm not sure what he means, but okay. We see a mark on the back of Shino's neck similar to the one on his arm and on Jinba's face. Kojo also has the same mark. Then we switch to Jinba and Seiki, where Goji enters, telling Seiki there's an emergency. He explains that the villagers are causing trouble because they want to enter the mountain. Goji shows Seiki the stone Shino found on the mountain and says it fell from Shino's coat yesterday. They discover it's real gold. Jinba asks Shino, where did you find this? Shino replies, what's so important about it? Goji says, so you got this from the mountain? Shino replies, yes, and what's wrong with that? Goji tells them, the mountain was originally a gold mine, Seiki. Didn't you know? Seiki responds, yes, the gold caused a lot of pollution on the mountain, which is why it's forbidden to climb it. Seiki scolds Goji, how could you show something like this to the people? It could endanger them. Goji apologizes, explaining that the military police saw him and then the villagers approached him. Seiki says, are those people stupid? Have they forgotten what happened 5 years ago? Many people died because they entered the mountain. Goji replies, didn't you say the 5 who went up the mountain would have been fine if they hadn't drunk from the river? She retorts, you idiot, I never said the mountain was safe. Then Shino speaks up, saying, I have an idea. Haven't you wondered why it always rains on the mountain and why people aren't allowed to enter safely? Seiki thinks to herself, he's talking about the spirit of the great ape, isn't he? She recalls a saying about the ape spirit. It loves children and never harms them, but it doesn't allow adults to enter the mountain. Later, Shino sits with Sasuke, talking about the strange man and Koko. Shino is still angry about the man when, suddenly, the man appears, saying, you're still angry, even after you made Koko run like a servant to check the mountain for you? Shino, furious, says, you stabbed Sasuke, and now you have the nerve to stand here in front of us. He tells Sasuke, shout at him too. Sasuke says, alright, what's your name? The man replies, Kino. Shino asks, and what do you want? Kino responds, Koko got mad at me for what happened yesterday. She was angry with me, and after thinking about it, I realized a killer like him shouldn't be near a child. So I'm sorry for the trouble I caused you. Shino, upset, says, who are you calling a child? Sasuke jokes, is that what really bothers you, Shino? Shino then asks Kino, tell me, who is that woman? Kino explains that Koko saved his life and is like a mother and sister to him. She's the most important person to him. He asks, do you want to know anything else? Shino replies, no, but he thinks to himself that since Koko, who's a spirit, saved Kino's life, it means something significant. Meanwhile, the giant ape is talking to Koko, holding a dead baby ape. Koko tells him the baby is gone. The ape says he can't stop thinking about the lives of children and recalls how years ago, a little girl promised she would return, but she never came back. Koko tells him, there's no escape from this. After all, you're a spirit. He responds, how can I be a spirit if I can't even protect those around me? I feel like my existence has no meaning. Later, all the villagers gather at the Council of Elders, demanding that Shino show them where the gold is, but Seiki argues with them, saying, this is madness. If you want to go on your own. Angry, she storms off. Seiki returns to her clinic when a crow flies through the window with a message, saying that the villagers have kidnapped Shino. Furious, Seiki reacts. We find that Shino and his friends are heading up the mountain with the villagers, but they can't figure out how to enter. Sasuke asks Shino, what's going on? Why can't we get in? Shino explains, don't you see? It's not raining. That means the spirit of the great ape won't let us enter today. Just then, a crow arrives to inform Shino that Seiki is angry with them and is going to punish them. The crow crashes into a barrier that the ape spirit had set up to block entry. The barrier breaks, and rain pours down on them suddenly. At this moment, the villagers celebrate the rain and want to take it with them. They even plan to move the village to the mountain to find more gold. Shino tells them that won't happen because the spirit of the ape won't allow it. Right then, the giant ape spirit appears, furious with them, and begins killing the villagers. Shino is shocked by what he sees, realizing that the ape spirit is completely different from the last time he saw it. Meanwhile, Seiki enters the forest, hearing the apes roar, and thinks, that stupid crow must have done something. Seiki finds the dead baby ape, noticing that it has already started to decompose, suggesting it died about a week ago. She sees a ring on its hand and says, this is Asahi's ring. She recalls her childhood, playing with the giant ape and its son, whom she called Asahi. The ring in the baby ape's hand originally belonged to Seiki's grandmother. At this time, the giant ape is about to destroy the entire mountain with its immense power. Seiki appears just then. She is the child the ape had been waiting for, and it listens to her, returning to its calm nature. She tells it she's happy to see it again and that next time, her child will stay with it instead of her. Afterward, everyone returns to the village. The villagers tell Seiki that that many people went up the mountain with the outsiders and never returned. Seiki responds, if you're talking about those outsiders, they're here and have been since this morning. Your information is wrong. In the morning, Shino finds Sasuke's stone and they bid farewell to Seiki, returning to their homeland. At that moment, Shino and his friends arrive at the train station and they board the train. Jinba wants to travel with Shino, but Kojo stops him, saying, where do you think you're going? He takes him aside and says, come on, let's go to our seats in the second class of the train. They enter a compartment where they find a man reading a book. They ask if they can sit with him, and he responds, no problem. They sit down, and Shino feels something strange about the man, as if he possesses spiritual power too. The man asks Sosuke, are you from the House of the Elders? Sosuke responds, yeah, something like that. The man then says, life must be nice for you. First class train seats, I bet you're used to this. Huh. Sosuke replies, not really, but I'm traveling with someone this time, and it's a long journey to the capital. At that moment, Shino tells Sosuke, it's raining hard outside. Sosuke looks surprised and asks, since when? The man with them mentions, the conductor announced a storm is approaching the capital. Shino and Sosuke are both puzzled. Shino says, how did that happen? The sun was just out a moment ago. Sosuke decides to go to the dining car to get food for Shino, leaving him alone with the man. The man says to Shino, your older brother really worries about you, huh? Shino doesn't respond, but instead, he says, I smell snow. The man, confused, asks, what did you say? Shino continues, maybe the rain will somehow turn into snow. The man, now nervous, says, but that's impossible, right? It's not snow season. Shino replies, it's unfortunate that it's not, but wouldn't it be wonderful to see snow in the middle of summer? And indeed, at that moment, snow starts falling from the sky, and everyone on the train is shocked. A drunk man barges into the compartment and asks, is there an empty seat? The conductor lied to me. He yells at Shino, demanding he gets up. The man with them intervenes, saying, the conductor wasn't lying. These are first-class seats, and people like you aren't allowed here. The drunk man gets angry and starts yelling, so Shino punches him, kicking him out of the compartment. Sosuke finds the man lying on the ground, ignores him, and enters the compartment, carrying a water balloon monster. The balloon monster expands and grows massive, pinning the drunk man. The man in the compartment is stunned by the balloon monster's size. Sosuke tells Shino, I got you some milk tea. Want some? Shino says yes, and they notice the snow has turned back into rain. The man with them remains in shock, letting out a small scream. Meanwhile, Magi is worried about Shino and Sosuke as she stands by the window. Osaki calls out to her, but she gets angry and hits him on the head with a lamp. He reassures her that they'll be back soon and in good health. We return to Shino in the train, resting his head on Sosuke's lap. The man in the compartment with them is deep in thought, wondering who they are, feeling anxious and scared. Then, a priest enters the train, saying he senses the presence of spirits. He follows the scent until he finds Shino, Sosuke, and the man in the compartment. The priest exclaims, I've finally found them. 3 spirits in one place, disguised as humans. At that moment, a spirit of the snow woman emerges from the man. The priest says, you've finally revealed yourself. The spirit attacks the priest, freezing him into ice. Shino recognizes the spirit, calling her by name, Yuki, right? The spirit also recognizes him and happily greets him. Shino says, you're really Yuki. I'm happy I get to see you again. The man who harbored the spirit is baffled, asking, how do you know her? How are you able to touch her? He continues, do you two know each other? Shino responds, yeah, one day I was caught in a snowstorm and Yuki saved me. Ever since then, I play with her every winter. Shino then asks Yuki, where have you been all this time? I kept asking about you, but the forest guardian spirits always told me they hadn't seen you in a while. What were you doing? Yuki smiles and says she's been with the man for the past few years. The man interrupts, saying, I can explain it more quickly. He asks them to help convince Yuki to leave him alone and let him live his life in peace. Shino explains that Yuki stays with him because she wants to protect him, adding, if she leaves you, you'll die. She must have saved your life when you were on the verge of death in the snow, right? That's why you should accept it. The man asks, does this mean I'll live like this forever? Shino tells him, don't think you're the only one who paid a price. Yuki paid a price too so that you could live. Shino is about to say more, but Yuki stops him, and Shino respects her wishes, staying silent. After that, Shino and Sosuke arrive in the capital. As they leave, the man calls out to them, saying, my name is Dasto. What are your names? Sosuke and Shino introduce themselves, and they all say their goodbyes. Even Shino's raven emerges from his arm to bid Yuki farewell. Sosuke then asks Shino, what did Yuki sacrifice for Dasto? Shino responds, she had a beautiful voice and used to sing all the time. I loved her singing, and everyone who heard it loved it too. At that moment, we see a flashback of Dasto when when he was dying, thinking of a little girl. Turns out this girl is his sister, the one he wanted to return to. We then realize that his sister is Magi, as she has been dreaming about this exact scene for a long time. The next day, Maggie is getting ready to go to school, and Osaki asks her, "Why do you want to go to school?" She responds, "Because I want to become someone valuable. I want to become a doctor." Later, Shino returns home and gives the report to Rio. Rio asks, "Did you find anything you were looking for?" Shino says, "No, I didn't find anything." But Rio's dog senses that Shino is lying, so it grabs him by the neck. Shino then corrects himself, saying, "At first, I didn't find anything, but then at the last minute, I found something, though there were many things I didn't understand." Rio tells the dog to release Shino. Meanwhile, Sosuke is preparing delicious cakes and says to Iani and the foxes, who are all impressed by the cakes, "Would you like to try them?" They reply, "No, that would be too greedy." Sosuke then adds, "There's one with blueberry, walnut, and also cheese." They quickly change their minds and say, "Yes, please, we'd like to try them." They all eat and enjoy the cakes very much. Maggie then walks in and says, "You made what I requested right away." She thanks Sosuke, telling him that the girls at school will love the cakes. She's about to leave when Sosuke says, "Aren't you going to see Shino and say goodbye before you leave?" She replies, "No, unfortunately. I'll be late if I do, but I have a request for Shino. Some books I ordered will arrive this afternoon. Could you have him bring them to me at the school?" Sosuke agrees, but then says, "How? Isn't the school restricted to men?" She replies, "He can sneak in if he pretends to be my little sister." Sosuke informs Shino of Maggie's request. Shino asks, "So she wants me to take them to her dorm?" Sosuke says, "Yes, but remember, once she's there, you won't be able to see her for a while. She'll need permission to leave after that." Shino decides to quickly deliver the books before anyone catches him. He heads to the school with Sosuke, who is in his dog form. Sosuke tells him, "I'll wait for you here. Just make sure you don't get into trouble." Shino is amazed by the size of the school and thinks to himself, "Wow, this is the first time I've seen a school this big." Meanwhile, Maggie is feeling bored in her room. Another girl enters. It's her roommate, Suzu. They start talking, getting to know each other, and Suzu is hungry. Maggie offers her some cake, and Suzu is delighted. At that moment, a crow taps on Maggie's window, scaring Suzu. Maggie exclaims, "What are you doing here now?" The crow responds, "I've brought you something forbidden, books for learning how to kill." She gets mad and hits him with the window, then asks, "Where's Shino?" The crow tells her, "He's in the back garden." Maggie says she's going to meet him and leaves the crow stuck in the window. When Maggie reaches Shino, he says, "What are you wearing?" She replies, "You came late, that's why I'm dressed like this." He hands her the books, saying, "Here's what you asked for." She responds, "Do you know what time it is?" He explains, "I was late because of Rio's long lecture." She asks about Sosuke, and Shino tells her, "He's outside because this place is off limits to men, so he didn't want to come in." She then asks, "What are you doing in a place like this at this time?" Shino doesn't know how to respond. She says, "All right, next time I call for you, come immediately." Shino asks, "So you're going to call me again?" She snaps, "Do you have a problem with that?" He quickly says, "No, not at all." She tells him, "All right then, take care of yourself, and don't cause any more trouble for Rio." Shino, feeling a bit hurt, replies, "I don't cause trouble for anyone." He leaves feeling upset. As Shino runs to get back home, the weather suddenly changes, and he starts screaming. The next morning, Shino seems dazed, and Kojo says, "Wake up and eat your food already." Sosuke apologizes to Kojo, saying, "Sorry for bothering you." Kojo replies, "Bother me? I was worried when I saw a dog carrying a boy on its back." Kojo asks Sosuke, "What happened to Shino?" Sosuke says, "I don't know. He was supposed to meet Maggie at the girls' dorm, but when I got there, I found him asleep on the ground." Sosuke tried to get details from Shino, but he couldn't understand anything Shino was saying. Kojo jokes, "Looks like he saw the ghost of a girl or something." Shino, shocked, says, "I saw the ghost of a doll." Kino and Coco show up and ask, "A ghost doll? What are you talking about?" Kojo says, "How can it be a ghost if it's a doll? Aren't ghosts people who have died?" They all laugh at Shino and say, "You're afraid of ghosts but not monsters?" Shino replies, "That's because ghosts are already dead." Kojo says, "You're just like the girls, afraid of bugs and ghosts." Kojo hands Shino a piece of paper and says, "Draw this ghost for us." Shino draws a picture, and Jinba arrives, asking, "Why are you all gathered here?" He looks at Shino's drawing of a teddy bear and says, "Do you want a teddy bear, Shino?" Kino and Kojo burst into laughter. Shino walks out, feeling upset, and Coco follows him, asking, "Are you still angry?" Shino says, "No, I'm fine." She tells him, "I believe you. Don't worry." At Maggie's school, she is also amazed by how big the school is. She's upset that she's not in the same class as Suzu and says she wants to visit the library. At that moment, a girl calls out to her, "Aren't you the transfer student who arrived yesterday?" yesterday? Maggie asks, are you Riri, the monitor? Riri responds, oh, so you know me? Sorry for the late welcome. Riri then says, Maggie, why did you leave the dorm so late last night? You're breaking the rules. Maggie apologizes, saying her little sister visited her. Riri says, alright, I'll forgive you since it's your first day, but be careful. There's a guard here that no one has ever seen, and he's very strict. When Maggie returns to her room, she asks Suzu about the guard. Suzu responds, do you mean that soft bell sound? I've heard it before when I snuck out for snacks. I got caught and scolded by the supervisor, but I've never seen the guard. Those who have seen him don't talk about it. Maggie finds this exciting and says, that's so thrilling. Suzu replies, you're so brave, Maggie. Meanwhile, Kino wants to search for the doll ghost and asks Shino to come with him, but Shino doesn't want to. Kino insists, and Sosuke also agrees, so they decide to investigate the situation. That evening, they go to the school and explore the area. Shino is scared and just wants to leave, but Kino grabs him by the neck, and they enter the school's hallway. Suddenly, they hear the sound of a bell and a beautiful singing voice. The atmosphere around them changes, and the doll ghost appears. Kino asks the bear, are you a rabbit or a bear? The bear responds, you're mistaken. I'm a rabbit bear. Shino, terrified, says, it talks too. The ghost moves in a strange way, approaching them. Kino starts to worry and punches Shino. The doll ghost says, according to the rules, no pets are allowed in the school. Now you'll be punished for your crimes. The bear shoots lightning in front of their feet. Kino runs off, leaving them behind. Shino chases after him, shouting, you coward! You're the reason we're in this mess. Take responsibility. They escape from the school with the bear ghost chasing them with lightning. Meanwhile, Sosuke hasn't moved and calmly tells the bear, we're sorry for disturbing you. We were just worried about our sister in the school, and we're relieved to know you're protecting them. Thank you. The bear ghost softens, becoming friendly again, and the beautiful singing resumes. The next morning, Suzu and Maggie are walking down the stairs, and Suzu says, your childhood friends are really interesting. Maggie replies, you mean Sosuke and Shino, right? She then wonders when she had told Suzu about Sosuke and Shino. They laugh together, and suddenly, Suzu runs off, saying, I forgot something in the room. I'll be right back. At that moment, Riri and her group approach Maggie and greet her. Riri asks, what do you think about having lunch with me today? Maggie thanks her for the offer but says, I promised my roommate I'd eat with her today. Maybe I can bring her along. Riri looks confused and asks, what roommate? Aren't you alone in the room? Maggie, puzzled, says, wait a minute, I'll be right back. I forgot something in the room. She rushes to the room, looking for Suzu, but doesn't find her. Instead, she finds the doll ghost lying on the bed like an ordinary doll. The scene shifts to Shino, who is at the wise men's headquarters with Sosuke and Ryo, busy with their tasks. A beautiful woman sits down with Shino, and after some time, she gets up. Shino hands her his pendant and says, I hope you stay safe. Meanwhile, Kino is walking through the city and suddenly spots the man who once took his life. He rushes towards him, but the man vanishes before his eyes. Kino bumps into Jinba at that moment, who asks him, are you okay? Kino remains silent, offering no reply. Later that evening, the beautiful woman holds Shino's pendant and muses. When he speaks, he sounds so mature, and his eyes are quite lovely. She smiles and adds, this boy is entirely different from the younger siblings. We learn the woman's name is Kahaku. At the same time, Kino returns home, and Koko asks him, you're still in your going out clothes. Why haven't you changed? He talks to her about the man who took his life 2 years ago, scarred his face, and left him with a mark. That's how Kino knows this person isn't Sosuke, but he still needs to find him. Kojo is with Sosuke and tells him, Shino's having dinner with Jinba inside. Suddenly, Shino runs after the crow, who has taken his piece of meat. As Shino is running, he crashes into Kino, who mistakes him for the man he's searching for and draws his sword to strike. He almost hits Shino but stops abruptly when he recognizes him. Shino says, what are you doing here? It's dangerous to be wandering around at this hour. Kino replies, you're the fool here, not me. Who swings a sword around like that? Sosuke arrives and tells Kino, you're quite a skilled swordsman. Who taught you how to fight like that? Kino replies, it's a family legacy, passed down through generations. It's the duty of the family to hone the sword skills necessary to practice this art. Kino then offers to teach Shino swordsmanship, but Shino immediately refuses. Kino grabs him and squeezes his shoulder, saying, you're not very nice, are you? Kino asks Sosuke, don't you have any siblings? Sosuke replies, I don't know. Surprised, Kino asks, what do you mean? Sosuke explains, I have very few memories of my childhood, and my mother never mentioned anything about siblings, so I don't think I have any. funny. They continue discussing the man Kino is searching for, and Shino tells Kino, "Why do I feel like there's someone else inside you?" Everyone is puzzled, and Shino continues, "It feels like," but Coco interrupts, saying, "You've noticed that too?" Shino walks up to Coco and learns that Coco's heart is currently with Kino, and that's the pact between them as spirit and human. The next morning, Shino and Sosuke head off to complete a task assigned by Ryo. As they walk, they talk about the beautiful woman with golden eyes, and Shino thinks to himself that she always reminds him of a longing for the past. Meanwhile, the beautiful woman is very ill at home, coughing up blood. At that moment, the man Kino has been searching for enters and says to her, "It looks like you're going to die soon." "Well, no big deal, I guess." The woman notices that the man has Sosuke's face. The man offers her a deal. "If you give me your beautiful eyes, I'll grant your wish." She thinks to herself that this man isn't human, and he tells her, "You want to live, don't you?" At the wise men's headquarters, Shino and Sosuke arrive and encounter two strange-looking elders. Shino is frightened and draws his sword, but Sosuke calms him down, saying, "Don't worry, they're not monsters." Shino replies, "If they're not monsters, they're definitely mummies." The two elders are surprised by the conversation and ask Shino and Sosuke, "What's wrong with you two? Why are you here? Young people rarely come here. Are you lost or something?" Just then, a cockroach appears, and Shino, terrified, dashes out of the building. He keeps running until he no longer knows where he is, and Jinba passes by him. Meanwhile, Sosuke's task is to repair the roof of the wise men's headquarters. As Kino continues his search for the man, he runs into Jinba, who has Shino with him. Jinba asks Kino, "Who exactly are you looking for?" Kino responds, "That's none of your business." Jinba then asks Shino, "What are you doing here?" Shino explains, "I was lost in the street, and Jinba found me." At that moment, the crow senses something strange and says to Shino, "What's wrong?" The crow replies, "I can sense a shadow." Shino is startled, and suddenly, a strong wind blows through the area. The man Kino has been looking for appears. The man approaches them and says to Shino, "You cut your hair." Shino, "It was so beautiful." Kino grows furious and moves to attack the man, but suddenly freezes as memories of his own death flood back, immobilizing him. The man turns to Shino and asks, "Tell me, how does it feel to have a monster inside you?" Shino is shocked that the man knows everything. The man says some cryptic words to Shino and vanishes. Everything returns to normal, and Jinba asks Shino, "Do you know who that man is? The one who looks like Sosuke?" Shino replies, "I don't know him, but he knows me very well." Meanwhile, the woman with golden eyes is at home, reflecting on the strange man's words. Shino rushes back to the mansion and heads straight for Ryo's room, ignoring Osaki, who tries to speak to him. Shino talks to Ryo about what happened, and we learn that the man is half of Sosuke's soul. One day, that part of the soul will return to Sosuke, or else he will certainly die. The day passes, and the next morning, Kino stops Shino and asks, "Do you know that man from yesterday?" Shino replies, "Who do you mean?" Kino says, "Stop playing dumb. I mean the man with the same face as Sosuke. He knows you well." Shino answers calmly, "That doesn't mean I know him." Kino insists, "Stop lying. I'm sure you're hiding something." Shino responds, "I'm not hiding anything." Kino snaps, "Fine, I'll ask Sosuke then." They start to argue, but Jinba splashes water on them and says, "Stop fighting so early in the morning." They head inside afterward to dry off so they don't catch a cold. Shino then notices that Kino has the same mark on his body as everyone else. Later, Sosuke and Shino are walking down the street, and they talk about how strange it is that everyone has the same mark. Shino comments, "I never thought I'd gather all the ones with the stones in such a strange way." Shino recalls what Sosuke's half-soul said to him, "It seems you haven't gathered all the stones yet, have you?" Shino wonders what exactly he meant by that. When they arrive at the wise men's headquarters, Shino spots the golden-eyed woman waiting for him. He sits with her, and she talks a little about herself. Curious to know more, Shino asks the elders at the headquarters about her. Turns out they know some information as well, and Shino deduces that she's from the northern village that was destroyed in the past. Later, Shino is sitting in the garden, waiting for Sosuke to finish his work. He falls asleep leaning against a tree. Ryo finds him lying on the ground and says, "What are you doing here alone?" Shino gets up and follows Ryo to the elders, who thank Ryo for having Sosuke help them. Ryo then asks Shino about his progress in finding the others with the stones. Shino tells him, "Don't worry, there's progress." Ryo warns, "If you keep avoiding your work, I'll take over for you," then leaves. A man from Kahaku's village, the one with the golden eyes, shows up and brings Shino a gift from her. He invites Shino to meet her, but it turns out to be a trap to kill him. The man believes that if he kills Shino, he can win Kahaku's love and marry her, as she's always wanted revenge for her family. The man mistakenly believes that Ryo killed Kahaku's family, so by killing Shino, who is part of Ryo's family, he thinks he can exact revenge. revenge. The man pulls out a gun and aims at Shino. Kahaku tries to stop him, but he shoots Shino anyway. In that moment, the crow becomes enraged, and a terrifying monster emerges from Shino's arm, killing the man. Chaos breaks out in the area, and the police quickly gather at the scene. Jinba arrives and finds Shino lying on the ground with Kahaku holding him, blood everywhere. Kahaku thinks Shino is dead and is deeply saddened, but Jinba takes him and notices that the wound is healing rapidly. Jinba tries to confuse her, asking, "Are you sure the bullet hit his neck?" She replies, "Yes, I'm sure. There's so much blood here," and explains what happened. At the same time, the giant dog informs Ryo of what occurred. Jinba takes Shino, telling Kahaku to stay away from him, and rides off with him on his horse. Meanwhile, Ryo is deeply worried about Shino and rushes over with his dog. He stops Jinba on the road, and all the friends gather, anxious about Shino. Everyone is worried and fearful that Shino might die, but suddenly, Shino wakes up and says, "I'm really hungry," easing their concerns. They quickly bring him food. Shino explains what happened, and Ryo asks, "So, what happened to the man afterward?" Shino replies, "The crow ate him." Sosuke sternly tells Shino, "Don't ever get close to someone reckless again. Do you understand?" Shino assures him, "Don't worry, I'm fine. The man was weak anyway. He was only acting out of some strange misunderstanding." Kahaku was really scared too, and I tried to frighten him a little, but it was just bad luck for him. At that moment, Sosuke becomes furious and slaps Shino across the face, shouting at him for being reckless, which nearly cost him his life. Shino, confused, says, "What did I do? I can't really die." Sosuke snaps back, "I can't believe someone who died 5 years ago is saying that," and walks away. Jinba follows him and asks, "Are you sure you're leaving Shino alone right now? You know he never apologizes for his mistakes." Shino spends the rest of the night fuming at Sosuke. Ryo tries to calm him down, saying, "Don't leave the house tonight, rest. The great dog has set up a barrier around the house because of this new situation." Shino asks, "What situation? What's changed?" Ryo replies, "You haven't noticed, have you?" Shino then becomes aware of the crow's power surging inside him. Meanwhile, Sosuke is at the wise men's headquarters, where he finds Kahaku sitting anxiously, worried about Shino. He reassures her that Shino is fine, and she finally relaxes. The next morning, Shino is taking a bath, reflecting on the power and changes happening within him. He falls asleep in the tub from exhaustion, and when Ryo enters the room later, he finds Shino asleep. Suddenly, Shino starts to feel unwell, and Ryo grows concerned. At that moment, the crow's energy bursts from Shino's body, and his form changes drastically. He reverts to his natural age of 18. The crow's power is in full frenzy, and the crow speaks through Shino's body, telling Ryo, "Feed me humans." Outside, the great dog howls furiously in the street. Ryo sits with Shino, who is calmed down and is resting with his head in Ryo's lap. Shino had consumed some of Ryo's blood to settle his powers. Ryo says to the great dog, "I know you're upset, but it's my duty too." The next morning, Osaki and the foxes head to the inn where Ryo and Shino are staying, and they're surprised to find that the great dog has set up a barrier around the inn. They go inside, and Osaki says, "Ryo, where are you? I brought the things you asked for." Osaki approaches the bed and sees Ryo talking, but his neck and clothes are a mess, covered in blood. They initially think Ryo has someone with him, mistaking Shino's long hair for someone else, not realizing it's actually Shino. Ryo then explains everything that happened. The scene shifts to a flashback of Kahaku at age 8, sitting in a carriage surrounded by snow. Her family had sold her to the owner of the shop where she now works. Ever since, she hasn't felt hunger or thirst. Kahaku wakes up one morning to find herself covered in blood. She had drunk her co-worker's blood during the night. Meanwhile, Jinba and Kuju are with Sosuke, talking about Shino. Sosuke tells them, "I'm leaving Shino in your care for a while," before walking away. Back with Ryo, we see the foxes treating his wounds, which Shino caused after Ryo explained the situation to them. The foxes comment that they never expected Ryo could get injured like this, but Osaki tells them no one can do anything to Ryo because he wouldn't allow it, except for Shino. Osaki is surprised at Shino's true form, now an 18-year-old. Osaki asks Ryo, "Does this mean Shino's curse has been lifted?" Ryo replies, "It's not that simple. A lot happened yesterday, so this is likely temporary." At that moment, Jinba and Kuju enter the room and find Osaki and the foxes there. They've come to visit Shino and brought food as well. They ask about Shino's condition. Ryo tells them that Shino is completely asleep and asks Jinba, "Do you know anything about what happened to him?" Jinba replies, "I looked into Kahaku's background, the girl who was with Shino yesterday." Jinba then explains to Ryo all the information he gathered and says, "Since you're Shino's guardian, the man couldn't do anything to you directly, so he decided to hurt Shino to get revenge on you." Jinba also tells Ryo that Kahaku disappeared from the estate after the incident where her coworker was killed, and Ryo responds, "So, Kahaku Kahaku killed her coworker herself? At this moment, Kahaku is heading to the wise men's headquarters to see Sosuke. Meanwhile, Kuju is worried about Shino and decides to check on him. He hears Shino calling his name, and when he looks inside, he's shocked. He grabs Jinba and rushes out of the room, asking, "What happened to Shino?" Osaki says, "I knew anyone who sees Shino now would be shocked." Shino calls out to Kuju again, saying, "I'm hungry, bring me the food box." Kuju remains very nervous, unsure of what to do or how to process what's happening. Later, Ryo is walking to the temple, and Shino tells him, "I want to go with you. I won't cause any trouble. I'll just go see Sosuke so he can see how I look as an adult." Ryo agrees on the condition that Shino takes care of himself and stays out of trouble, which makes Shino very happy. Later, Kahaku is talking to Sosuke about herself. She says that her only hope was to return safely to her family and her younger siblings, but when she met Shino, she just wanted to create some good memories with him. Unfortunately, she ended up turning into a monster instead. At that moment, Shino and Ryo arrive. Shino speaks kindly to her, reassuring her that he'll grant her request because he understands her feelings and knows what she truly wants. He asks for her forgiveness and tells her she's as beautiful as an angel. Then he draws his legendary sword, shows it to her, and ends her suffering by killing her. Shino feels sorrowful afterward and sits by the tree. Sosuke finds him and says, "There's no point in feeling guilty. She's not angry at you. On the contrary, she's probably very happy because you freed her." Sosuke then says, "Come on, let's go meet Maji so she can see how you look now." He goes to prepare tea to bring along. When he returns to Shino, he finds him asleep under the tree, having reverted to a child once again, just like before. In the evening, the elders of the wise men gather with Ryo at the headquarters, and the meeting concludes with a decision to summon Shino before them. They already know everything about Shino's true nature. At that moment, everyone is gathered inside the wise men's headquarters, and Shino is about to meet the priests as the foxes had requested. As he enters, a strange woman appears, and she's incredibly powerful. She mistakes Shino for an intruder and attacks him, saying, "There's a strange creature inside you. I'm gonna cut off your arm so I can study it freely." She attacks Shino again, but he quickly defends himself. The woman is shocked that Shino was able to block her attack, and the fight continues. But then, the woman uses magic on Shino, binding him and preventing him from moving. She says, "Who are you? If you don't answer, you'll suffer. Trust me." But Shino, being stubborn as usual, uses his power to free himself and attacks her again. She's stunned that he can do all of this, and Shino escapes, running to the large hall inside the headquarters of the wise men. However, Ryo catches him and says, "You look like you're having fun here, don't you?" Shino, scared that Ryo might hit him, replies, "You're lucky you managed to escape from the guardian angel in one piece." Shino responds, "In one piece? That crazy woman nearly killed me. What angel are you even talking about?" At that moment, Ryo tells him to be quiet. The guardian angel arrives and calls out to Ryo, asking, "Did you see a kid around here?" Ryo replies, "Hello, Lilith. No, I didn't see anyone." She's confused and says, "Really? Then why do I smell the scent of a non-human here?" Ryo's great